This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everyone. Communication, so important. It has been the driver for all of us for thousands of years. It's kind of amazing that with all the technology that we have now, digital and everything, it comes back to the same thing. Communication, words, and just getting ideas and connecting. Now let's go in a different direction here. Communication with your subconscious. The part of you that is kind of buried away there, but is really piloting everything you do. That is possible through hypnotherapy. We're going to talk about that today. He's a psychotherapist, counselor, and offers so much support to so many, changing lives, whether you have phobias, whether you have fears, you want to stop smoking. It's all right there. Bart Walsh back on the program with us. How are you doing today?
Wonderful, Steve. How are you doing?
Good, good. And the whole communication thing, and I believe you use the term unconscious. Now, I always say subconscious. It's the same, unconscious, subconscious. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Back in the 50s, there was a lot of debate in the professional community about which is correct, and well, neither side won. Both terms are used, and kind of we could call it non-conscious too, and the inner mind. There's so many things we could call it, but it's what is not functioning under our control consciously.
What's interesting is after many years of, I guess, being pushed into this, but you hear the word unconscious, it's thinking of somebody that, passed out. They're not conscious.
Yeah.
But you are tapping into the part of the brain that is not conscious. So the term definitely applies there. And you've said this before, and I want to go a little bit deeper into it. Looking at the unconscious, subconscious, as a different entity or a different part of the body. Am I hearing that right?
Well, I think of the unconscious or subconscious, and just to back up a little bit, the argument with those two terms is some people felt that if you called it the subconscious, you were implying that it was less than the conscious mind. And so many didn't like that insult to the unconscious. But anyway, regardless of what you call it, with the many years I've been doing unconscious work with myself and with other people, I really think of the unconscious as the body, because there's almost nothing that happens at an unconscious level that doesn't involve some physiological shift.
Wow. So like the true shift our mindset here to subconscious, whatever you want to call it, that is the body.
Yeah. If you consider, when I am questioning the unconscious and getting responses from the unconscious, what's involved? Well, if I am getting ideomotor responses or physical movements as responses, like a head nod or a head shake is an ideomotor response. I like to develop finger signals for yes and no as ideomotor responses as well. But if I'm getting an ideomotor response to a question I ask of the unconscious, what's happening? Well, the nervous system is certainly involved in that movement. The parts system is usually involved in that movement. The muscle system is usually involved in that movement. So there's a lot of physiology just to produce a yes or no response. But then what's in there has to decide on the response. Is it going to be a yes or a no? And so there's an awful lot going on. And then there's physiology taking place in order to respond, just like this physiology involved in me speaking right now. So I think of the body, well, as the unconscious, or the unconscious as the body, because there's so much involved, and I can ask many, many questions about what's happening at a physical or physiological level as well, and get answers. And those answers can typically be substantiated with hard evidence.
Hmm. You mentioned the part system. Can we go a little bit deeper there? As I understand it, there are
Yeah,
different parts to our personality. That doesn't
yeah,
mean we have split personalities. That's something
right.
totally different.
Yeah.
Um, how many parts could somebody have to their personality? Everybody's different. I get that.
Well, most of us have hundreds of parts or
Hmm.
thousands. It depends. And if I can go back to the beginning, what I have learned, certainly from communicating with my parts and the parts of other people, is that some parts can begin intrauterine in the blood system.
Hmm.
So there are blood parts that are typically the first parts that develop. Once we're born, other systems develop parts, and all systems can create parts except skin and nerve cells. But bone cells can create parts. The parts are typically born of cell nuclei within the system that they're at. So bone cells will bear bone parts, and then the parts separate from the cell or the nucleus they're born from, and function independently. So all of our systems, the liver, the lungs, kidneys, they can all make parts. And typically by the time we're 4 or 5 years old, most of the systems that are going to make parts have already begun creating parts, and they can continue making parts throughout a lifetime.
Wow.
Now, so we've got all these caretaker parts, and that's the other thing I need to explain is that parts typically oversee the system that they come from. So our heart parts are watching the heart, overseeing the heart, seeing what the heart needs, making sure the heart is functioning as well as it can. And the lung parts are doing the same things for the lungs, and on and on. Now, consider we've got many, many parts throughout our system that are functioning as caretakers, but they're also communicating with each other about what's happening throughout the system. And if a part in one system wants to send a message to other systems, they can basically communicate through the bloodstream. And that message will then get to the rest of the system in a short bit of time. And if the part system wants to have an urgent message sent, it typically works through the nervous system. And so it might create a shock wave through the nervous system. Okay, now another very important aspect of parts is that when we have a powerful emotional experience, our system, if the experience isn't processed immediately with someone else, if it isn't really worked through very quickly, our system creates new parts, and then it gives the experience with all of its emotion to these new parts, and then puts those parts in isolation to protect the rest of the system from destabilizing. This is important because this is certainly what happens with trauma, but it doesn't require trauma to have that kind of experience. We could get yelled at by a parent as a child, or anything that produces a powerful emotional response can thus create parts and put parts in isolation.
When it comes to the parts, and I had this conversation with a friend very recently, and you know, it, pretty much what you're talking about, he said, well, also when you engage with different people in your life, let's say your children, let's say your superior, boss at work,
Yeah.
your spouse, you act differently.
Yes.
Would we also say that's part of you or part of the parts?
That's part of the parts and part of you. Same
Okay.
thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So different parts. Let's say um, let's say a person's a professional athlete.
Hmm.
When they are playing their sport, there's going to be sports parts.
Sure.
Uh, that parts, that are going to be engaging the muscle system, the nervous system, and so forth. But when they're having dinner with their mother-in-law, there's going to be a whole different set of parts.
Gotcha. Yeah. I always wondered if that was part of the parts that we refer to. My friend was right. I can't tell him that. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So how, when we look at the subconscious or the unconscious and want to get in there to do some work, how do you address certain parts, if you will? Because there's so much going on in there. I know that when I first had hypnotherapy, studying it a little bit, knowing that a lot of what we deal with, if not most, is our childhood. I said, take me back to my childhood. Let's pass go. Don't even need to, dig deep. Let's go right back there. But of course, even going there, you need to address certain scenarios and situations. How do we target that?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to do it. For instance, once if I'm working with an adult and that adult gets into a very stable situation where they can be fully present and aware of their resources and engage their resources. One approach that I've used many times is to invite the person into a nice trance and then ask them to float up high to get hold of that rope of time
Hmm.
and then pull themselves back on that rope of time to early childhood. And when they see themselves at 3 or 4 years old, drop down onto the ground, introduce themselves to that child, and do what's necessary to develop some rapport with that child, let that child know somehow they are the older self, and then let the child know that the two of them are going to take a walk through time,
Hmm.
forward through time, and they're going to have many, many experiences that this child is going to witness. And as they go through each of these experiences, they can shed whatever needs to be shed or correct whatever perception needs to be corrected. For instance, making sure a child realizes that they're not responsible for that thing that happened to so and so, and that lots of corrections can be made. And so then this adult person in their trance is walking forward through time with this young child, but the child is growing with each step they take. And I invite them to come all the way to the present, wherein there will be a merger of that then adult person and the person that originally went back in time as an adult. But it's a way to walk through lots and lots of experience and shed what needs to be shed from those experiences. That's one approach. Another approach is to develop the ideomotor signaling system with the person. I like to use fingers, and I will ask the person, I'll ask the unconscious, are there any parts that continue to carry the severe distress from that car accident you had in 2014?
Hmm.
Uh, Boom. Okay. Or another approach that I commonly use is I will ask, are there any parts that really have a need to criticize the system in order to make things right, in order to make things better, in order to keep things on the right track? Are there parts that really, really need to criticize and indeed do criticize constantly? Now, most of the time I get a yes response, and then I will say I would like to talk to all of these parts. And and then I tell them that science has shown us that criticism typically doesn't get the desired results, and that there are other ways to make things better and to improve experience and to make behaviors better.
Hmm.
And this is through compliments and complimentary language. And I tell these parts, I said, I know that at your core, you want things to be better. You want the things to be as good as possible, and that's why you're criticizing. So, what if you could get much better results trying this other approach? And I said you could conduct an experiment, and you could, for 1 month, use this complimentary approach. No criticism, just compliments. And I give them examples of complimentary uh, language and so forth. And typically the parts will agree to run their own experiment. And I say, well, at the end of the month, we'll check in. And if you've gotten good results, then you can just continue using that complementary approach and let go of the criticism. And that's typically what happens.
It's truly amazing how you're going back in time in somebody's mind essentially, and in a way repairing what was done.
Hmm.
It's profound how that can take place. And you mentioned a moment ago, Bart, it sounded like a timeline where it's almost as if you're flying above as you go into a hypnotic state when you work with someone,
Yeah.
that they're looking at the timeline and then dropping, almost like flying over the time, like a football
Yeah.
field where they have the graduation of yards, and you're
Yeah.
flying over it. And it's like, all right, well, 4 years old, let's drop down into that on that timeline. Drop me on that
Yeah.
timeline, and let's do a little bit of work.
Yeah.
It's I've actually in a way had that done. I think they call it a timeline regression.
Uh-huh.
But essentially, it's the same thing. It was like, all right, go back to the first time that you ever felt sadness. And it was, I guess, to eradicate negative emotions. Go back to the first time you ever felt shame. Yeah, I had to think. I don't know, like, and if I wasn't sure, it was like, all right, let's fly above it again, and let's drop down a little bit further back.
Uh-huh.
It is amazing. You are going. I don't want to say literally, but in a way, you're going back in time.
Well, what is remarkable and wonderful, as I see it, is that as changes take place, even walking through that timeline
Hmm.
when a person is releasing ownership of something or changing a perception about who they are or the world. As this is happening, there's physiological change actually taking place and releasing the emotions. All those emotions have chemical signatures. And so there's changes on that level as well. And the now when I'm watching someone as they go through this march through time, I'm
Hmm.
seeing movements in the body and sometimes, sudden jerks or shifts and there's almost always different movements taking place. And then uh, when I talk to the person after they come back to the present, I'll usually get quite a story about their experience.
Is that also part of it when you're working with somebody and they may have their eyes closed? Are you looking at them and observing different physical cues?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm watching it. It's the body is speaking
Mm,
while
mm.
all of this is happening. And so sometimes there's movements that take place in the feet for a while, and then it gets up to the shoulders, and they're moving around, and sometimes the head will reposition itself. Sometimes the fingers will be dancing, and it's different for different people.
Sure.
And so I'm watching and kind of listening to the body, basically.
As I believe we said before, the body doesn't lie. So that person may be unaware that they're even, showing a certain motion while they're experiencing emotion going back in time, potentially in their childhood.
That's it. It's so true. And so often someone will come in and they'll talk about a pain that they're experiencing. It might be in their thigh. They've got a sharp pain, and I don't know what that is. I didn't hurt it. I didn't bang it on anything. I don't know what,
Mm,
and it's the body getting attention. Okay, so we just ask then, okay, is there something important that needs to be understood from this pain? Yes. Okay. So then it's parts that are carrying some experience from the past, and the pain in the thigh is drawing attention to that. So then we make inquiries and find out that, oh yeah, when you were 14 years old, that was when you had that run-in with so and so, and you did get banged up and your leg got hurt, and there's memory that the muscle is carrying, and it gets our attention so that all of that can be resolved. So all the
wow.
emotion connected with that injury can be resolved, and there's parts that have been holding the experience and the emotions all that time. But
Amazing.
then finally they get released. But they had to deliver a signal to get, attention from the rest of the system in order to resolve that thing from the past.
Look how hypothetical here. Let's say a child is doing something. Let's say they're hammering. They're 10 years old and they hit their finger
Yeah.
and their dad is there. Dad scolds them, says, "You jerk, what are you doing?" Blah, 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 blah. That makes an impact on them in terms of their relationship with their father at that time. Could be a one-off. It could be an ongoing thing where, dad was a little testy from time to time. Now they're 40, 50,
Yeah.
whatever. And they feel pain as they go back in under hypnosis, feeling pain in their finger, their thumb. Now
Yeah.
it healed 2 days later after that when they were 10 years old.
Yeah.
But could that be that pain or discomfort or something is coming up as a signal from the body to say, oh yeah, remember that time? We need to work on that. We need to heal from that.
Exactly. That happens quite often.
Wow.
Yeah, because the thumb is healed, and it's but the parts are still carrying that experience. So in other words, when that father yelled at that 10-year-old after hitting his finger, likely parts were created and then put in isolation, carrying that
Oof.
very experience, and they've been carrying it all along.
Wow. That is pretty amazing. And you could even see that, in that hypothetical situation, let's say that 40, 50-year-old man now wants to work on something around the house. He's got a family of his own and everything, but he has apprehension. He's afraid to. He loves doing that kind of work, but he doesn't want to get judged, but he doesn't even know. But it's because I would imagine that part of him was, I don't want to say damaged, but it's on his subconscious radar, if you will.
Yeah, there's part of him that's still carrying apprehension about doing that physical work with a hammer.
Mm, amazing, just amazing. Um, Final question. I know that every situation is completely different. Let's say in that situation, how long after it's addressed discovered within hypnotherapy, does healing take place? Can it be instantaneous? Could it take a few days after that, a month, maybe another session, or all of the above?
Much can happen very quickly, and so the most significant piece is finding the parts that are carrying the experience and processing those parts out of isolation so that they can release the emotion and release the experience and step into the present. So then once the parts are in the present, they can interact with other parts. They're no longer lonely.
Mm.
And that's a very big piece of it. Then there may be, it may take a little more time for whatever tissue was irritated because of the reconstruction, if you will, of the past events. It may take a little time for that tissue to heal up, kind of like a bruised muscle.
Hmm. I've never heard it put that way, and I feel it's beautiful. The reconstruction of events, um, amazing, and I appreciate you talking about this today because I've heard the term parts used, but I thought that was for an isolated situation. I never knew that it applied to hypnosis and this type of healing. Had no idea. I thought it was a different personality or a different modality addresses parts within us. I didn't know that you can hit those up with hypnotherapy.
And quite often, I when I'm questioning myself, I will ask, uh, does the majority of me want to do X? Or would the majority of me prefer not to do X? And it's a nice way to just weigh the balance inside.
Love that. And that can be the baseline for anything.
Yeah.
I wrestle with that. Let's say I have plans to do something, but I'm on the fence. I'm not really sure if I want to, or is it, in my best interest? And I'll sit with it. And after time, it's just like, it gnaws. No, you don't want to do that. No, that's not for you. No, you don't. And then I bail on it after sitting with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And usually it's right. It's amazing. It's amazing
Oh,
how it
yeah.
works. Bart, what's the best way to connect with you?
The website is a good way to do it, and that is Affinity, Affinity, Affinity Counseling and Hypnosis.com. The and is spelled out. And there's a phone number and email that people can access there.
Beautiful. And I'm gonna throw this out based on our conversation today. If anybody has a question, even if you want to keep it anonymous about anything that we've talked about here or previous episodes, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you and get things answered. Thanks for answering these questions today, Bart. Really appreciate it. A lot of insight, clear to, and I've done hypnotherapy, game changer, game changer. I've even done, and I haven't done it in a while, and I might even do it tonight. Self-hypnosis. It's been a
Yeah.
while. It's been a while. Best sleep ever. I find. All
Great
right.
talking with you, Steve.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.